Good afternoon. If I can have your attention, please. Thank you so much for being here today, and welcome to ATF headquarters. It is really our honor to have you here with us today as we dedicate this wall to so many who mean so much to those of you who are here. We thank you for coming and for being in attendance with us, and we hope that this is just the first of many opportunities that we have to be able to share with you as we move forward in our efforts to do all that we can to eradicate firearms-related violent crime in this nation. It's a big job, and it's going to take all of us working together to do it. That said, I'd like to ask you to stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Before I get started, I'd like to recognize a couple of dignitaries that we have with us today. Others will be recognized as we go along in the program. But with us today is the Director of the United States Marshal Service, Mr. Ron Davis. Thank you, Ron. Appreciate you being here. And the Director of the United States Secret Service, Ms. Kim Cheadle. Thank you for being here with us today as well. I now have the privilege of introducing a young lady who is, in her own rights, a giant. Why do I say that? Because, you know, it would be very easy for a person of her age and at this stage in her life to have just simply disappeared into the fabric after the event that she was involved in. But she chose not to. She chose to stand up. She chose to speak up. She chose to be loud. She chose to come here and to be an intern with ATF, even in the aftermath of her situation. Her name is Mia Tretta. Mia was shot in the stomach in November of 2019 at Saugus High School by another student who shot 5 schoolmates with a privately made firearm, or a ghost gun, killing 2 before killing himself. Soon afterwards, she decided to turn her anger and sadness into advocacy work. Some of that work has taken place at Providence Holy Cross Medical Center, the Mission Hills Hospital where she was treated. Ms. Tretta formed a bond with the hospital's chief executive officer, and the two have worked on safe storage advocacy titled Stop the Bleed, training to help community members learn how they can save lives. Ms. Tretta has also served as an intern for ATF last summer, and an idea like this just may have been born on an intern's desk about a year ago. We'll figure that one out too. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you all Ms. Mia Tretta.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Mia Tretta. I'm a 19-year-old gun violence survivor, and when I was 15 years old, I was shot in the stomach at Saugus High School in Southern California. I've done almost 5 years of gun violence prevention advocacy work, and for the past year, I've interned here at ATF in the Office of the Director. I know looking at your son, daughter, wife, mother, or in my case, my best friend, Forever 14, Dominic Blackwell, up on a memorial wall in a government building is no replacement for them. I wish instead of being here, I was at college with Dominic, still arguing about who would be getting better grades. But the harsh reality is we only have their memories and their stories to take with us, to refill our tank when we want to give up, which I'm sure, if any of you are like me, is almost every day. But we don't give up. We can't give up. It's not an option. I hope that this memorial wall will be the same fuel for the men and women who work here, and a reminder why we fight every day. We're not a number. We're a very reality empty seat at a dinner table. Reminding the men and women who pass through this building that no one is immune to gun violence. And it's past time that we all say enough. Lessening gun violence will take all of us, because most great successes is with the start of collaboration. 2 years ago, I was invited to speak at the White House and introduce President Biden when he was going to announce his federal ghost gun ban. I was only 17 years old. The only time I had been to Washington, D.C. was with my junior high school. And honestly, I had never even worn heels or a remote outfit I should be wearing to a White House event. But there I was. My family and I were escorted in. We were told we would be in a waiting room with Steve Dettelbach before meeting the president. I privately thought, who is this Cleveland lawyer? Soon, I would find out he was set to be announced that day as the new ATF director nominee. Nervous does not adequately describe how my family and I were feeling that day. However, when we got into the room, we were greeted by a tall man with the most friendly smile and his equally loving family. My nerves immediately left as I spoke to Mr. Dettelbach and his wife and his children. He understood the massive problem we have in America with gun violence. He sympathized with the trauma that survivors go through. He understood the need for more community programs, and with the help of our president, he promised me and my family that he would do everything in his power to lessen the amount of preventable gun violence we see in this country daily. And to no surprise, he kept that promise. Last summer, I started working in his office as an intern, and I saw firsthand how much he fights for our safety. In my opinion, he is a champion for survivors everywhere. He knows that me and each of you and your lost loved ones are more than a statistic. I'm honored to be asked to introduce my boss, a great leader, collaborator, and friend, ATF Director Steve Dettelbach.
I'm not sure I should say anything. Thank you, Mia. Thanks for your courage. Thanks for your advocacy on behalf of others who have been impacted by gun violence. Having you back at ATF Day is an honor, and having you last year as an intern where this all started was truly fantastic. Good afternoon, everybody. All right, thanks for being part of this moving event, our first annual Survivor Summit. The strength, bravery, and courage of the survivors who have spoken with us today has been truly incredible and inspiring. Our vision for this summit was to continue to lift the voices of those who have been impacted most directly by firearms violence. And we were honored to hear so many of those voices today. It was also to welcome you all into this building and share with you more about the heart of another incredible group of people who fight to protect Americans. Those are the men and women at ATF. Now, ATF is the only federal law enforcement agency tasked solely with protecting Americans from violent crime, particularly gun crime. That is a huge and critical mission. Today, by some counts, there are more than 400 million firearms in this country, more guns than people. And the level and types of firearms violence we are seeing in this country are wholly unacceptable. That is what drives the people at ATF. That is why brave ATF agents run toward gunfire to protect the lives of strangers. It's why ATF scientists work tirelessly in our labs to try and perfect new technologies and techniques. It's why our analysts spend hours scouring data sets to generate actionable intelligence. It's why our professional staff work tirelessly to support every single aspect of this small agency's outsized mission. Now, ATF's strategy to drive down gun violence relies on two key pillars. First, we use data and what we call crime gun intelligence to better identify and then catch the most violent folks in our communities. These are the trigger pullers who are terrorizing so many others. And second, we work to cut off that all too easy supply of firearms to these same violent people, often felons who the law says are not permitted to have firearms. And we have to use every tool available to take action to do both of these things. That's why, for instance, we opened just last week a new crime gun intelligence center with 13 law enforcement agencies as partners in Chicago. And that is why, the week before that, we promulgated a new rule to implement the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, and to, at long last, make it crystal clear that if you're engaged in the business of dealing firearms for profit, there is no gun show loophole, and there never was. Now last year, we saw a precipitous decline in gun violence. But while every life saved is certainly worth celebrating, we know that far too many lives continue to be lost. Just last year, 2023 alone, more than 40,000 Americans were killed by gun violence. And that, by the way, was with one of the steepest declines in homicides in history. As Mia said, these are not just numbers. These are parents, children, friends, colleagues, community members, fellow Americans. For those who work in this mission space, constantly responding to this relentless drumbeat of gun violence, I think it would be understandable at some level for people to become desensitized, to kind of shove to the back of our minds the humanity that those numbers represent. But that's not the right thing to do, and it is certainly not what happens at ATF. And that is what this wall represents. It is a reminder of what we come to do when we come to work every day here. A reminder of why ATF agents take the risks that they take, and why everybody at ATF dedicates their careers to this mission, to honor the fallen and protect the living. This wall is truly a living memorial, because one of the best ways to honor those who have lost their lives is to keep them in our hearts, in our minds, before our eyes, and on our lips. As Cicero said, and you can read this quote on the kiosk, "The love you gave in life keeps people alive beyond their time. Anyone who is given love will always live in another's heart." This permanent exhibit both honors and tells the stories of the victims of firearms violence. The Faces of Gun Violence wall and kiosk is about always continuing to keep front and center the lives, the stories, and the courage of those who have been impacted by firearm violence. And it's also about inspiring ATF and all our law enforcement partners in the constant mission to save lives and seek justice at great risk. ATF agents and employees have tough jobs and dangerous days. And this wall is about reminding everyone what inspires the kind of epic sacrifices that they make, that law enforcement make. By the way, many in law enforcement, their faces are on this wall because they've lost their lives in the fight to protect the lives and safety of so many others. But we always have to remember that the fight for safety, what we do every day, is for these people. I invite you all to look at the exhibit. The 118 faces here represent only a small fraction of the countless victims of firearms violence. It's less than people who perish each and every day in the United States from this epidemic, sadly. And while we don't begin to claim that this covers everybody, it does provide a visual depiction, a picture of the tragic diversity of those to whom gun violence does great harm. Look at the wall. On it are students and professionals, law enforcement and civilians, rural, urban, old, young, the young. Too many children. I certainly don't need to tell the people in this room that the leading cause of death for children in our country is guns. Not car crashes, not cancer, firearms. This wall demonstrates the tragic human toll of that statistic. Just look at the faces behind me. See them. See, for instance, Donald Reed. Donald Reed started his career in law enforcement at the age of 17. Don was a husband, father of 2 sons, a brother, an uncle, a friend, and he was also the partner of ATF's first ever senior law enforcement partnership advisor, Chief Dwight Henninger. On June 7th, 1980, when Officer Reed was just 27 years old, he and 3 other officers, including Chief Henninger, entered a bar in Garden Grove, California to serve a felony arrest warrant. While Officer Reed was escorting this arrested man out the back of the door, the man turned and fired his handgun, striking Officer Reed in the chest, hitting Chief Henninger, and fatally wounding Don Reed. Look at Don and Reed. See Don Reed. See Dominic Blackwell, Mia Tretta's best friend. Dominic, whose parents are here today, tragically lost his life in a school shooting in Saugus High School in Santa Clarita, California. Dominic was an amazing 14-year-old whose life mirrored joy and optimism that he saw in his favorite character, SpongeBob SquarePants. Dominic's infectious laugh and beaming smile were a source of light and warmth to everybody around him, much like the laughter and cheerfulness that SpongeBob brings to the screen. Dominic's legacy is defined by his ability to bring happiness to others, his unwavering loyalty, and genuine kindness. Look at Dominic Blackwell. See Dominic Blackwell. Now, this kiosk can tell you more about Officer Reed, Dominic, and all the others who are part of this exhibit. The photographs on this wall will stay up for 1 year until another 118 photographs will take their place as we rotate at the time of next year's Gun Violence Survivor Summit. The kiosk, which contains the same photographs and the short bio for every single person, will remain, and new photos and bios can be added after each year's dedication on a rolling basis as they're submitted from people in the community. Please feel free to look at the exhibit. Please use the touchscreen to learn more about the lives of so many. You'll see the quote there from Cicero, the one I referred to. We keep these people alive beyond their time. We also honor the memories, not just by thinking of individuals like this, these people, but by taking action. Action to prevent more faces from being added to this tragic wall. The men and women at ATF work tirelessly every day, as do so many in this room and all across this country, to do just that. And as far as action goes, thank you for your kind words, Mia, but now is not the time to congratulate ourselves. Now is not the time to stop. Now is not the time to even slow down. Now is the time to double down and triple down on action to protect life and safety. As you can read in the kiosk, that is what Attorney General Robert Kennedy believed and said. Now, on the day immediately after Dr. Martin Luther King was shot and killed in Memphis, former Attorney General Kennedy gave a speech, actually in Cleveland, Ohio. And it was a call to action. He said, quote, "Yet we know what we must do. It is to achieve true justice among our fellow citizens. Not long after that, Robert Kennedy would also become a victim of gun violence. We honor his memory, not just by speaking his words, but by continue his legacy of action. His job, being the U.S. Attorney General, is a job that requires the utmost integrity, compassion, and grit. It requires the courage to take action to protect others. And we are blessed to have an Attorney General who personifies that legacy, the Honorable Merrick Garland. Attorney General Garland has been there to fight for public safety through thick and thin. From his days as a line prosecutor to his time overseeing the Oklahoma City bombing prosecution, from his time on the federal bench to his current leadership supporting ATF and law enforcement in the fight against gun violence, Attorney General Garland has always acted to protect the rights and safety of the innocent and to support those who risk so much in service to this country. And Attorney General Garland has never spent a single day in his job without thinking about the people in this country that this Department of Justice serves, the victims and survivors of crime. Through all his days of fighting for Americans, General Garland has been a steady, sure, and determined hand steering our nation toward justice. We are deeply honored to have him here with us today to dedicate this wall. Ladies and gentlemen, the 86th Attorney General of the United States, the Honorable Merrick B. Garland.
Thank you, Steve. Grateful for that overly generous introduction. No disrespect intended, but next time I'd like that woman there to introduce me. She's really something. I'm grateful for your leadership and for everything your team did to put this summit together. It's really quite extraordinary. I also want to take this moment to recognize all the professionals at ATF who work tirelessly to protect our communities every day, often at great risk to themselves. Their mission is as urgent as it has ever been. They do their work with great skill and under enormous pressure. I just had the honor of meeting several of the survivors attending this event. They shared with me their stories, their grief, and their devotion to preventing other families from experiencing the profound loss that they have experienced. We stand here today at ATF's Faces of Gun Violence, a memorial to those who have lost their lives to this tragic epidemic. Behind me, we see a 15-year-old boy from Washington, D.C., who helped his football team win a championship. We see a mother and her 3 young daughters from Oregon, who spend their final evening together in excited anticipation of the eldest daughter's first day at kindergarten. We see a 17-year-old honor student from Michigan who tutored his classmates and loved his 3 little brothers. We see a beloved mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother from Buffalo whose door and pantry were always open to family and friends. We see a 9-year-old girl from Uvalde whose family beamed with pride at her first communion. We see a loving husband and father who served for over 2 decades as a police officer and whose heroism, even after he was shot, saved the lives of countless other officers. We see 2 FBI agents who put their lives on the line to combat insidious crimes against vulnerable children and made the ultimate sacrifice. We see their stories, the rich lives they led, and the people who loved them. We see their beautiful photos, and we see many of their loved ones here today. but we do not see them here with us today because they are victims of gun violence, because he was shot and killed in his neighborhood, because they were the victims of domestic violence, because he died of suicide during a mental health crisis, because she was targeted in a hate-fueled mass shooting, because she was killed in her 4th grade classroom, because they made the ultimate sacrifice while protecting the public. Each victim in this exhibit was someone's world. Their beloved child, their role model, their revered elder, their best friend, their hero, the love of their life. On behalf of the Justice Department, I want to express my deepest condolences to all of you who are here today to honor a loved one. I would also like to extend my gratitude. Your presence here is a testament to your everlasting love. But I know that my condolences, my gratitude are not enough. I know there is nothing we can do to bring back the 118 people we honor today, or the hundreds of thousands of victims of gun violence who have been stolen from their families and communities across the country. And I know that the tragedy of gun violence in our country is so enduring and so enormous that it can often feel like there is nothing we can do. But that could not be further from the truth. In the effort to keep our country safe from gun violence, the Justice Department will never give in and never give up. We know what is at stake. So we are doing everything we can to interrupt and disrupt the cycle of gun violence from start to finish. We are working to honor the victims and survivors of gun violence by pursuing justice on their behalf and by holding the individual perpetrators of gun violence accountable for their crimes. We are using our prosecutorial and technological tools to identify the repeat offenders and gangs who are principally responsible for community violence. We are supporting our state and local law enforcement and community partners in their efforts to drive down violent crime. We are cracking down on the criminal gun trafficking pipelines that flood our communities with illegal guns. We are deploying strike forces to dismantle every link in illegal trafficking networks, from wherever illegal guns originate to wherever they are used to commit violent crimes. We are supporting evidence-based initiatives that intervene at the community level to disrupt gun violence before it occurs. We are investing in programs that focus on addressing the deadly intersection between gun violence and domestic violence by supporting specialized training for our law enforcement partners and enhanced support services for survivors. And we are using our own authorities and supporting the efforts of law enforcement agencies across the country to implement laws that keep firearms out of the hands of individuals who pose a threat to themselves and to others. Just 2 weeks ago, we issued one of the most significant gun regulations in decades to expand background checks and curb unlicensed firearms dealing. That regulation closes the so-called gun show loophole. It does not matter if guns are sold on the internet, at a gun show, or at a brick and mortar store. If someone sells a gun predominantly to earn a profit, they must be licensed and they must conduct a background check to ensure that the buyer is not barred by law from having a gun. This regulation is a historic step in the Justice Department's fight against gun violence, and it will save lives. But we know there is so much more work to do. This evening, as we remember those we have lost to gun violence, the Justice Department promises that we will strive every single day to honor their lives with our work. We promise we will not rest until every family, every law enforcement agent, and every community is safe from gun violence. We promise we will never stop fighting to save the lives of those we love. And as our dedicated ATF agents pass through this atrium every day, this memorial will stand as a powerful monument to those they are fighting for. Thank you all for being here.
I want to thank Attorney General Garland again for being here with us and for all his support. I want to thank our wonderful Deputy Director, Marvin Richardson, for not only emceeing, but for helping everything that you see here that goes on at ATF to happen every single day, and all the men and women of ATF. Thank you, everybody who came from near and far to be our guest here today, to make today's event truly special. This concludes the dedication and the event for today. See you next year.